The sun-scorched Montana territory of 1876 held no mercy for the weak, but it did promise second chances for the brave. That's what Rebecca Blackburn told herself as she clutched the crumpled letter that had brought her 2,000 miles west to Park City, a dusty mining settlement nestled in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains. The train's final whistle pierced the late afternoon air as Rebecca gathered her meager possessions. Pain shot through her left ankle with each movement, a cruel reminder of the accident that had occurred when the train had jolted unexpectedly during a water stop in Cheyenne. She had tumbled awkwardly against a luggage rack, twisting her ankle badly. The swelling had only worsened during the final leg of her journey. Rebecca's gloved hands trembled as she descended the train steps, her breath catching with each painful movement. The platform was crowded with miners, merchants, and families, but none were looking for her. She paused, scanning the unfamiliar faces, wondering if her correspondence had been for nothing if the man who had promised to meet her had changed his mind. Miss Blackburn. A deep voice called from nearby. She turned to see a tall figure approaching through the crowd. Dust-covered boots, worn denim pants, and a faded blue shirt topped by a tan hat that shaded a sun-weathered face. He moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin, stopping a respectful distance from her. "I'm Adam Xavier," he said, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair that curled slightly at the edges. "I believe we've been corresponding." Rebecca attempted to take a step toward him, but her injured ankle betrayed her. She stumbled, a small cry escaping her lips as pain flared up her leg. Adam moved quickly, closing the distance between them. His strong hands gently steadied her before she could fall. Concern etched deep lines around his eyes as he looked down at her swollen ankle. "You're hurt," he stated, his voice softening. "It's nothing serious," Rebecca insisted, though tears threatened to form in her eyes. "Just a twist from the journey, I'll manage." Adam studied her face for a moment, taking in the exhaustion written there, the determination in her green eyes, and the way she bit her lip to keep from showing pain. Without another word, he gathered her carpetbag in one hand and offered his other arm for support. "Lean on me," he said simply. As they moved slowly away from the platform, Rebecca fighting to hide her discomfort with each step, Adam glanced down at her and said the words that would forever change the course of her life. "You're home now, rest easy." The ride from the train station to Adam's ranch was quiet. Rebecca sat stiffly in the wagon, still processing the reality of her new life. 6 months ago, she had been a schoolteacher in Boston with a modest income and a small apartment. Then the fire had taken everything: her home, her position, and nearly her life. With no family and dwindling savings, she had answered an advertisement in the newspaper. "Rancher seeks wife, respectable woman of good character and practical nature, passage paid." "We're almost there," Adam said, breaking the silence. His voice was neither cold nor particularly warm, but steady and reassuring. "My place isn't much to look at, but the land's good. Been working it for 5 years now." Rebecca nodded, studying his profile. Adam Xavier was not what she had expected. His letters had been straightforward and businesslike, but there had been a kindness to them that had given her hope. In person, he seemed reserved, yet there was a gentleness in how he handled her injured ankle, helping her into the wagon with careful hands. "How many cattle do you run?" she asked, recalling details from his letters. "About 200 head now, started with just 30, got some good grazing land up in the north pasture." He glanced at her. "And I've got chickens too, fresh eggs most mornings." The wagon crested a small rise, and Rebecca caught her first glimpse of her new home. A modest 2-story house stood against the backdrop of rolling hills and distant mountains. A large barn, corral, and several outbuildings completed the picture. It wasn't grand, but it was solid, built with care and maintained with pride. "There it is," Adam said, a hint of apprehension in his voice. "Xavier Ranch." As they approached, Rebecca noticed a column of smoke rising from the chimney, and warm light glowed from the windows. "Did you leave a fire going?" she asked. Adam's lips quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Mrs. Holloway from town. She comes by once a week to help with cooking and cleaning. I asked her to prepare something for your arrival." The gesture touched Rebecca unexpectedly. This man, still a stranger despite their correspondence, had thought to make her feel welcome. When they reached the house, Adam set the brake on the wagon and came around to her side. Without asking permission, he lifted her down as if she weighed nothing, careful not to jostle her injured ankle. "I can walk," Rebecca protested weakly. "No need," he answered, carrying her toward the house. "Dr. Bailey will be by tomorrow to look at that ankle. Until then, you need to stay off it." Inside, the house was simple but comfortable. A stone fireplace dominated the main room with sturdy furniture arranged around it. Everything was clean, if not particularly decorative. Adam carried her to a chair near the fire and set her down gently. "Mrs. Holloway," he called out, "we're here." A plump, gray-haired woman emerged from what Rebecca assumed was the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes widened at the sight of Rebecca. "Oh my goodness, what happened?" "Train accident," Adam explained. "Her ankle's badly swollen." Mrs. Holloway clicked her tongue sympathetically. "Poor dear, let's get that elevated right away." She bustled about, arranging a footstool and pillow before carefully helping Rebecca position her injured ankle. "I've made a stew," the older woman continued, "and there's fresh bread. The guest room is ready upstairs, but—" She glanced at Rebecca's ankle. "I'll make up the sofa for tonight," Adam said decisively. "She shouldn't be climbing stairs." Rebecca felt a flush creep up her neck. "I don't want to impose, it's no imposition," Adam cut in. "You're my wife." He stumbled slightly over the word, and Rebecca understood his hesitation. They were legally married through proxy, a common practice for mail-order brides, but they were still strangers to one another. Mrs. Holloway looked between them with kind eyes. "I'll fetch some linens for the sofa and then serve up that stew. You both look like you could use a hot meal." When she had bustled away, Adam stood awkwardly by the fireplace, hat in hand. "I know this isn't what you expected," he said quietly. "If you want to go back east once you're healed—" "No," Rebecca interrupted. She had made her decision long before boarding that train. "I came to be your wife, Mr. Xavier. A twisted ankle doesn't change that." Something flickered in his eyes, relief, perhaps. "Adam," he corrected gently. "If we're to be married, you should call me Adam." "Adam," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. "And I'm Rebecca," he nodded, a small smile finally breaking through his reserve. Rebecca. That evening passed in a blur of pain and exhaustion for Rebecca. Mrs. Holloway served a hearty stew, fussed over her ankle with cold compresses, and finally took her leave after extracting a promise from Adam to send for her if needed. Adam made up the sofa with fresh linens, building up the fire to keep the room warm through the night. He brought Rebecca's carpet bag so she could retrieve her night clothes, then respectfully retreated to the kitchen while she changed awkwardly behind a screen Mrs. Holloway had set up. "I'll be upstairs if you need anything," he said when he returned, standing near the stairs with uncertain posture. "Just call out, I'm a light sleeper." Rebecca nodded from her makeshift bed. "Thank you for your kindness today." A shadow of something pain, regret, crossed his face. "I'm sorry your welcome to Park City had to be like this. It's not your fault." "Still," he said quietly, "I wanted things to be better for you." Before she could respond, he added, "Good night, Rebecca," and disappeared up the stairs. Left alone, Rebecca stared into the dancing flames of the fireplace. Her life had changed irrevocably in the space of one day. She was now Mrs. Rebecca Xavier, wife to a man she barely knew, in a town thousands of miles from everything familiar. The weight of what she had done marrying a stranger, moving west with nothing but hope and desperation driving her, finally hit her fully. Silent tears slid down her cheeks as she wondered if she had made the greatest mistake of her life. Morning arrived with pale golden light filtering through the curtains and the scent of coffee permeating the air. Rebecca awoke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was until pain pulsed through her ankle, bringing reality crashing back. "You're awake." She startled at Adam's voice, turning to see him seated at the kitchen table, a steaming mug before him. He was already dressed for the day in work clothes, his hair damp as if recently washed. "How long have you been there?" she asked, suddenly conscious of her disheveled appearance. "Not long. I've been up since dawn, chores." He rose and approached, keeping a respectful distance. "How's the ankle?" Rebecca shifted carefully, wincing as she did. "Still painful, but perhaps a bit less swollen." Adam nodded. "Dr. Bailey should be here mid-morning. Would you like some coffee, or I can make you some tea if you prefer?" His consideration touched her. "Coffee would be wonderful, thank you." While Adam busied himself in the kitchen, Rebecca managed to sit up and arrange her nightgown more modestly around her legs. When he returned with her coffee, she accepted it gratefully, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. "I need to check on the herd," he said, backing away from the contact. "Will you be all right alone until the doctor arrives?" "Of course," Rebecca assured him. "I'm quite accustomed to looking after myself." Something in her tone must have revealed more than she intended, for Adam paused at the door, studying her with those intense blue eyes. "I imagine you've had to be," he said quietly. "Your letters didn't say much about your family." Rebecca looked down at her coffee. "There isn't much to say. My parents died of influenza when I was 16. I had an aunt who took me in, but she passed 3 years ago." Adam's expression softened. "I'm sorry, and you?" she asked, changing the subject. "Your letters mentioned you came west after the war." A shadow passed over his face. "That's right. Served with the Union Army. Afterward, Boston didn't feel like home anymore. Too crowded, too many memories." He adjusted his hat, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "I should go. Those cattle won't check themselves." After he left, Rebecca sat drinking her coffee, pondering the man she had married. Adam Xavier was a mystery, courteous but reserved, capable but uncertain around her. There was pain in his past. She could see it in the way his eyes sometimes drifted to places she couldn't follow. The doctor arrived just before noon, a jovial man with spectacles and a well-worn medical bag. He introduced himself as Thomas Bailey, Park City's only physician for 15 years. "Mrs. Xavier," he greeted her warmly. "I understand you've had quite the welcome to Montana." "It seems so, Dr. Bailey." He examined her ankle with gentle, practiced hands. "A nasty sprain, but nothing broken. You're fortunate." He wrapped it tightly with bandages from his bag. "Keep it elevated for at least 3 days. After that, you can begin to put weight on it gradually, using a cane or crutch for support." "How long until it's fully healed?" "Several weeks for complete recovery, I'm afraid, but you should be able to move about with assistance within a week." He peered at her over his spectacles. "Adam Xavier is a good man. He'll take care of you." Rebecca felt heat rise to her cheeks. "We barely know each other." Dr. Bailey smiled kindly. "Many marriages out here start that way. Time has a way of changing strangers into family." He packed his bag and stood. "I'll stop by again in a few days to check your progress." After the doctor left, Rebecca found herself alone with her thoughts once more. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of the wooden structure settling. She realized how little she knew about running a ranch or being a wife in the West. In Boston, she had taught grammar and arithmetic to young girls at a private academy. What use were those skills here? The front door opened around mid-afternoon, and Adam entered with a bundle under his arm. "Dr. Bailey caught me in town," he explained. "Said you'd need these." He unwrapped the package to reveal a pair of wooden crutches. "That was thoughtful of him," Rebecca said, "and this is from Mrs. Holloway." Adam produced a small basket containing fresh bread, preserves, and a jar of what looked like chicken soup. "She says she'll come by tomorrow to help you bathe and change." Rebecca's independence warred with practicality. "I suppose I could use the assistance." Adam nodded, looking relieved that he wouldn't be expected to help with such intimate matters. He moved about the room, adding wood to the fire and bringing Rebecca a fresh glass of water. "I need to finish mending a section of fence this afternoon," he said. "But I'll be within shouting distance of the house if you need anything." Rebecca watched him go, this man who was her husband yet still a stranger. She wondered what had driven him to seek a wife through an advertisement rather than courting a local woman. There were surely eligible women in Park City or nearby settlements. As the afternoon wore on, Rebecca grew restless. Using the crutches Dr. Bailey had sent, she carefully maneuvered around the main floor of the house, taking stock of her new home. The kitchen was well equipped if simple, with a cast iron stove, wooden cupboards, and a pump for water. A small dining area adjoined it, with a table that could seat 6 though it only had 4 chairs. The main room where she had slept held the sofa, 2 comfortable chairs, a small bookshelf with a surprising number of volumes, and the large stone fireplace. A writing desk stood near the window, papers neatly stacked upon it. Curiosity led her to examine the books more closely. Many were practical texts on animal husbandry, agriculture, and carpentry, but she was surprised to find several works of literature, Dickens, Twain, and even a volume of Shakespeare's sonnets. Adam Xavier, it seemed, was a reader. Through the window, Rebecca could see him working on the fence, his movements methodical and sure. The afternoon sun gleamed off his shoulders as he hammered posts into the hard ground. He moved like a man accustomed to physical labor, with an economy of motion that spoke of years of hard work. When he returned to the house as dusk was falling, Rebecca had managed to set the table using the contents of Mrs. Holloway's basket. It wasn't much, but it felt important to contribute something. Adam stopped short in the doorway, surprise evident on his face. "You shouldn't be up," he said, but there was no reproach in his tone. "Dr. Bailey said I could move with the crutches," Rebecca countered, "and I was growing quite bored just sitting." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Stubborn, are you?" "Independent," she corrected, though she returned his small smile. "I've set out Mrs. Holloway's soup. It should still be warm." They ate together, the silence between them gradually becoming more comfortable. After they'd finished, Adam cleared the dishes despite Rebecca's protests. "You've done enough for today," he insisted. "Dr. Bailey would have my hide if I let you overdo it." As he worked, Rebecca gathered her courage to ask the question that had been on her mind. "Adam, may I ask why you advertised for a wife? Surely there must be suitable women nearby." His hands stilled momentarily before resuming their task. For a long moment she thought he might not answer. "Park City is a mining town," he finally said. "Not many respectable women to choose from. Most are already married, too young, or—" He trailed off delicately. "I see," Rebecca said, though she suspected there was more to the story. Adam dried his hands on a towel, his back still to her. "And I'm not good at courting, never have been." He turned to face her, his expression guarded. "Letters seemed easier. You can think before you write." "Choose your words carefully." Rebecca was touched by his honesty. "I understand. I found it easier as well." Something in his eyes softened. "Did you? I worried you might have been desperate to accept a proposal from a stranger." "Perhaps a little desperate," she admitted. "But your letters were kind, honest. I felt I could trust you." Adam seemed to absorb this, weighing her words. "I hope I can be worthy of that trust." That night, after helping Rebecca back to her makeshift bed on the sofa, Adam lingered nearby, as if wanting to say more but unable to find the words. "Good night, Adam," she said gently, releasing him from the obligation. He nodded. "Good night, Rebecca." But instead of immediately heading upstairs, he added, "I'm glad you came, despite everything." Before she could respond, he was gone, his footsteps retreating up the stairs. Rebecca lay awake for a long time after, pondering the complex man she had married and the life they might build together, if given the chance. The next few days established a tentative routine. Mrs. Holloway came each morning, helping Rebecca bathe and dress before tackling household chores. Adam would leave early to tend to the ranch, returning periodically to check on Rebecca before heading out again. On the 4th day, Rebecca insisted on cooking dinner herself, balancing carefully on her good foot with the crutches propped nearby. Mrs. Holloway had brought groceries from town, and Rebecca managed to prepare a simple but hearty meal of roasted chicken, potatoes, and carrots. When Adam returned that evening, the surprise on his face was worth the effort. "You didn't have to do this," he said, removing his hat and washing up at the basin by the door. "I wanted to," Rebecca replied. "I can't contribute much while I'm healing, but I can at least cook." They ate together, the silence between them growing more comfortable with each passing day. After dinner, Adam surprised her by retrieving a book from the shelf. "I thought you might be bored," he explained, handing her a well-worn copy of Wuthering Heights. "I haven't read it myself, but the bookseller in town said many women enjoy it." Rebecca ran her fingers over the cover, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, it's one of my favorites, actually." "Is it?" A genuine smile lit his face. "I'm glad, then." As they settled by the fire, Rebecca reading and Adam mending a leather bridle, she felt the first real sense of home since arriving. It wasn't the grand romance she might have dreamed of as a young girl, but there was something honest in their growing companionship. "Adam," she ventured during a lull in the evening, "would you tell me about your family? Your letters mentioned parents, but little else." His hands stilled on the leatherwork. For a moment, she thought he might refuse to answer, but then he spoke, his voice low. "My father was a carpenter in Pennsylvania, taught me everything he knew about working with my hands. My mother kept house and taught piano to neighborhood children." A fond smile touched his lips. "They were good people, simple, hardworking. Are they still living?" His expression closed. "No. Father died at Gettysburg. Mother passed from pneumonia the winter after the war ended." "I'm sorry," Rebecca said softly. "It seems we've both known loss." Adam nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "Perhaps that's why your letters resonated with me. You never complained about your circumstances, just spoke of moving forward." "What choice is there?" Rebecca asked. "The past cannot be changed." "No," he agreed, "but it shapes us nonetheless." He set aside his work, standing abruptly. "It's getting late. I should check the livestock before turning in." As days turned into a week, Rebecca's ankle improved enough that she could move about the house more freely, though still with the aid of a crutch. She began to take over more household duties, finding satisfaction in creating order and comfort in what had clearly been a bachelor's home. The more she explored, the more she discovered small touches that spoke of Adam's character. The bookshelves were handcrafted, the joints precisely fitted. The kitchen table showed signs of careful repair. Everything was maintained with practical care, if not aesthetic consideration. One afternoon, as Rebecca was arranging wildflowers Mrs. Holloway had brought, Adam returned unexpectedly from town, carrying several packages. "What's all this?" Rebecca asked as he set them on the table. "Just some things I thought might be useful," he said, sounding almost embarrassed. "And there's a letter for you." Rebecca looked up in surprise. "A letter? Who would write to me here?" "It's from Boston. A Miss Harriet Wheeler." "Harriet." Rebecca exclaimed, accepting the envelope eagerly. She was a fellow teacher at the academy. She opened the letter, scanning its contents with growing emotion. "She writes that some of my former students held a collection after hearing about the fire. They've sent." Her voice broke as she pulled a bank draft from the envelope. $25 for a new start. Adam watched her carefully. "That's generous of them." "It is," Rebecca agreed, wiping away a tear. "I never expected." She composed herself with visible effort. "What's in the packages?" Adam seemed relieved by the change in subject. He unwrapped the first bundle to reveal several yards of cheerful blue and yellow fabric. "I noticed the curtains are faded," he explained. "Thought you might want to make new ones. And this," he opened another package, "is seeds for a kitchen garden. Mrs. Holloway said you mentioned wanting to grow vegetables." The final package contained a cane of polished wood with a simple curved handle. "Dr. Bailey said you could start using a cane instead of crutches soon. This one seemed sturdy." Rebecca touched each item with wonder, not at their material value, which was modest, but at the thought behind them. Adam had listened to her casual remarks, had noticed what might make her more comfortable in his home. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "These are perfect." Adam shifted uncomfortably under her gratitude. "It's nothing, just practical things." "Nevertheless," Rebecca insisted, "it means a great deal to me." That evening, as they sat by the fire, Rebecca working on hemming the new curtains and Adam reading a newspaper from town, she found herself studying his profile. The straight nose, the strong jaw now clean-shaven, the way his brow furrowed slightly as he concentrated. He was a handsome man, she realized, though in a rugged, weathered way rather than the polished appearance of Eastern gentlemen. "Is something wrong?" Adam asked, catching her gaze. Rebecca blushed at being caught staring. No, I was just thinking about what? She considered deflecting but opted for honesty. About how little we know each other despite being married. Adam folded the newspaper carefully. What would you like to know? Everything, she said simply. Your hopes, your fears, what makes you laugh, what keeps you awake at night. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. That's a tall order. We have time, Rebecca pointed out. Unless you plan to send me back east once I'm fully healed. His expression sobered immediately. Is that what you want? No, she answered truthfully, but I want a real marriage, Adam. Not just a practical arrangement between strangers. Adam was silent for a long moment, staring into the fire. I want that too, he finally admitted, so quietly she almost missed it. But I'm not sure I remember how to connect with another person that way. The war, she asked gently. He nodded, saw things, did things, came back different. Rebecca set aside her sewing and leaned forward. We all have scars, Adam. Some are just more visible than others. His eyes met hers, searching for something, judgment, perhaps, or pity. Finding neither, he seemed to come to a decision. I was a sharpshooter, he said, the words emerging as if pulled from deep within. Good at it, too good. I could hit a man from distances where he'd never see me, never know what hit him. His hands tightened on the arms of his chair. It wasn't fighting, it was hunting. Rebecca didn't speak, sensing he needed to continue uninterrupted. After Gettysburg, where my father fell, I became reckless, volunteered for dangerous assignments. Part of me wanted to join him. He drew a shaky breath. Instead, I survived, came home to bury my mother. Then headed west, as far from the memories as I could get. And you've been alone ever since, Rebecca stated softly. Adam nodded. Until now. The vulnerability in his admission moved her deeply. She rose carefully, using her cane for support, and crossed to where he sat. Without hesitation, she placed her hand over his. Thank you for telling me, she said, for trusting me with your truth. Adam looked down at their joined hands, then slowly turned his palm upward to clasp hers properly. Thank you for listening. That night marked a turning point in their relationship. Though they still maintained separate sleeping arrangements, Rebecca now in the guest room, as her mobility improved, a new ease developed between them. Adam began sharing more of his daily work with her, explaining his plans for the ranch and asking her opinion on decisions. Rebecca, for her part, transformed the house with small touches. The new curtains brightened the main room considerably. She rearranged furniture to create a more welcoming space and started the kitchen garden with Adam's help, planting rows of vegetables that would feed them through the coming months. As her ankle healed, she ventured farther from the house, exploring the ranch with Adam as her guide. He showed her the north pasture where the cattle grazed, the small creek that provided water year-round, and the stand of pine trees where he collected wood for winter fuel. It's beautiful, Rebecca remarked one evening as they watched the sunset from a small rise near the house. I never imagined Montana would be so alive, Adam suggested. Yes, she agreed. Everything seems more vivid here, the colors, the air, the sky. Adam's gaze rested on her face rather than the sunset. I'm glad you can see it that way. Some find it too vast, too empty. Not empty, Rebecca corrected, just waiting to be appreciated. A comfortable silence fell between them as the sky transformed from gold to deep purple. When the first stars appeared, Adam helped Rebecca to her feet, his hand lingering on hers longer than necessary. We should head back, he said, his voice lower than usual. It'll be dark soon. As they walked toward the house, Rebecca felt a new awareness between them, a current of possibility that hadn't existed before. Adam's hand occasionally brushed against hers, and each contact sent a flutter through her chest. That night, as Adam bid her goodnight outside her bedroom door, he hesitated, then leaned down to place a gentle kiss on her forehead. Sleep well, Rebecca, he murmured before retreating to his own room. Rebecca touched the spot where his lips had been, her heart racing. It was a small gesture, chaste and brief, but it represented a monumental shift in their relationship. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future with Adam that included not just companionship, but true intimacy. 2 weeks after her arrival in Park City, Rebecca was well enough to venture into town. Adam helped her into the wagon, fussing more than necessary with blankets and pillows to ensure her comfort. "I'm not made of glass," she teased. "Dr. Bailey said not to overdo it," Adam reminded her, though he smiled at her jest. The road to town was rough in places, and Adam drove carefully to avoid jostling her ankle. As they crested a hill, Park City came into view, a collection of wooden buildings straddling the main road, with the railroad station at one end and a small church at the other. "It's larger than I expected," Rebecca commented. "The silver mines brought prosperity," Adam explained, "though it's nothing compared to Boston, I'm sure." "I don't miss Boston," Rebecca said truthfully. "There are too many painful memories there." Adam glanced at her. "You never spoke much about the fire in your letters." Rebecca looked down at her hands. "It happened at night. I woke to smoke and heat, barely escaped with the clothes on my back." She swallowed hard. "3 people in my building didn't make it out." Adam's hand covered hers briefly. "I'm sorry." "The academy where I taught closed its doors the same week, with no home, no possessions, and no employment." She squared her shoulders. "That's when I saw your advertisement." "Providence," Adam murmured. Rebecca smiled faintly. "Perhaps." Town was bustling with activity. Miners in dirty clothes mingled with merchants and ranchers. A group of children played a game of tag near the general store, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Adam helped Rebecca down from the wagon, keeping a supportive arm around her waist as they made their way to the mercantile. Inside, the store was a treasure trove of goods, everything from nails to fabric to canned peaches. "Mrs. Xavier," the shopkeeper, a portly man with an impressive mustache, greeted her warmly. "So good to finally meet you. I'm Harold Simmons." "A pleasure, Mr. Simmons," Rebecca replied, smiling at his enthusiasm. "We've all been eager to meet Adam's bride," he continued, coming around the counter to shake her hand. "When we heard you'd arrived injured, the whole town was concerned." "That's very kind," Rebecca said, touched by the community's interest. "Adam Xavier's one of our most respected ranchers," Simmons explained. "Been waiting a long time to see him settled with a good woman." Adam cleared his throat, clearly embarrassed. "We need supplies, Harold." The shopkeeper winked at Rebecca. "Still a man of few words, I see. Some things never change." As they shopped, Rebecca became aware of curious glances from other customers. News of her arrival had clearly spread through the small community. Several women approached to introduce themselves, offering welcome and invitations to social gatherings once she was fully recovered. "The Ladies' Aid Society meets every Wednesday at the church," Mrs. Peterson, the minister's wife, informed her. "We're always looking for new members, especially someone with your education. I understand you were a teacher back east." "Yes," Rebecca confirmed. "For 6 years. Wonderful. We've been hoping to establish a proper school here. Currently, I teach the children 3 days a week in the church, but it's hardly adequate." Rebecca felt a spark of excitement at the prospect. "I would be delighted to help however I can." By the time they finished their errands, Rebecca had met what seemed like half the town. Adam watched her interact with everyone, a look of quiet pride in his eyes that made her heart swell. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Bailey approached their wagon. "Mrs. Xavier, looking much improved, I see." "Thanks to your excellent care," Rebecca replied. The doctor beamed. "Nonsense. Good constitution and proper rest, that's the ticket." He turned to Adam. "Taking good care of your bride, Xavier?" "Trying to," Adam answered. "Excellent, excellent." Bailey patted the wagon wheel. "Keep her off that ankle as much as possible for another week, then she should be right as rain." As they drove home, Rebecca felt a new sense of belonging. Park City might be small compared to Boston, but it had welcomed her with open arms, and beside her sat a man who was slowly opening his heart to her as well. "They seem like good people," she remarked. Adam nodded. "They are, hardworking. Honest, look out for each other. And they clearly think highly of you." A flush crept up his neck. "I've tried to be a good neighbor, help when needed." "It shows," Rebecca said softly. When they arrived home, Adam insisted on carrying her into the house despite her protests that she could walk. As he set her down in the main room, their faces were inches apart, his arms still around her. "Thank you for today," Rebecca whispered, suddenly breathless. Adam didn't immediately release her. His eyes searched hers, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her properly. Instead, he stepped back, his hands falling to his sides. "I should unload the supplies," he said, his voice rough. Rebecca tried not to feel disappointed. "I'll start dinner." That night, as they sat before the fire, Rebecca working on mending one of Adam's shirts while he read aloud from a book of poetry they'd purchased in town, she felt a contentment she hadn't known in years. This man, initially a stranger, now increasingly dear to her, had created a space where she felt safe, valued, and increasingly desired. The following weeks saw Rebecca's complete recovery and full integration into ranch life. She took over the household management entirely, releasing Mrs. Holloway to focus on other clients. She planted herbs alongside the vegetables in her garden, began preserving early summer fruits, and established a routine that complemented Adam's work. As promised, she also began assisting at the makeshift school in town, spending 2 afternoons each week teaching the older children mathematics and literature. The work brought her immense satisfaction, and the children's enthusiasm reminded her of why she had become a teacher in the first place. Adam, meanwhile, seemed to bloom under her attention. He began to smile more frequently, to laugh at her observations, to share stories from his day without prompting. Physical barriers between them dissolved gradually, a touch on the arm while talking, his hand at the small of her back when they walked together, their fingers brushing when passing items at the dinner table. Yet still, he hadn't kissed her. Not properly, not in the way a husband kisses a wife. Rebecca began to wonder if he found her lacking in some way, though his eyes often followed her around the room with unmistakable warmth. One evening in late June, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the gathering darkness, Rebecca gathered her courage. "Adam," she began hesitantly, "are you happy with our arrangement?" He turned to her, surprise evident in his expression. "Of course, aren't you?" "Yes, but—" She took a deep breath. "I wonder sometimes if you regret your decision to send for a wife." Adam's brow furrowed. "What makes you think that?" Rebecca looked down at her hands. "You've been nothing but kind and respectful, but sometimes it feels as though you're holding yourself at a distance." A long silence followed her words. When she dared to look up, Adam's expression was troubled. "I've been afraid," he finally admitted. "Of what? Of wanting too much, of scaring you away." He ran a hand through his hair. "Our marriage began as a practical arrangement. I didn't want to presume that it would become more." Rebecca's heart pounded in her chest. "What if I want more?" The look Adam gave her then stole her breath, naked hope mixed with long-suppressed desire. "Do you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. In answer, Rebecca moved closer on the bench they shared, gathering her courage to place one hand gently on his cheek. "I do." Adam's restraint broke. With a sound that was half groan, half sigh, he pulled her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened with months of pent-up longing. Rebecca melted against him, her arms winding around his neck as she returned his kiss with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily, faces flushed in the dim light. "I've wanted to do that since the day you arrived," Adam confessed, his forehead resting against hers. Rebecca smiled, her heart overflowing with happiness. "What took you so long?" "Fear," he admitted. "And perhaps a misguided sense of honor. I wanted to give you time to change your mind." "I'm not changing my mind," Rebecca assured him, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. "I chose you, Adam Xavier. I choose you still." That night, for the first time, they shared a bed as husband and wife, discovering each other with tender curiosity and growing passion. Afterward, as Rebecca lay in the circle of Adam's arms, listening to the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear, she knew she had found her true home. "I love you," he whispered into her hair, the words coming easily now that the dam had broken. "I think I started falling in love with you from your first letter." Rebecca propped herself up to look into his face, illuminated by moonlight streaming through the window. "And I love you. Not the idea of you, not the security you represent, but you, Adam. Your strength, your kindness, your quiet courage." His arms tightened around her, and she saw the sheen of moisture in his eyes before he pulled her down for another kiss. Summer passed in a golden haze of happiness for Rebecca and Adam. Their days fell into a comfortable rhythm, early mornings spent together before Adam headed out to the ranch work, Rebecca tending to household duties or teaching in town, evenings of shared meals and conversation that often led to passionate nights. The entire ranch seemed to thrive under their united care. The cattle grew fat on the rich summer grass, the garden produced abundant vegetables, and the house became truly a home with Rebecca's touch evident in every room. In late August, as they celebrated their first harvest from the garden with a special dinner, Adam surprised Rebecca with a small velvet box. "What's this?" she asked, opening it to find a delicate gold band set with a small pearl. "A proper wedding ring," Adam explained. "I should have gotten it sooner, but I wanted it to be special." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger, replacing the simple band they had used for their proxy marriage. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Like you," Adam replied, kissing her softly. "I want to do things right, Rebecca, give you the life you deserve." "You already have," she assured him, leaning into his embrace. As summer gave way to fall, Rebecca began to suspect a new blessing was coming to their lives. Her monthly cycle, always regular, failed to appear. Mornings brought waves of nausea that she hid from Adam until she could be certain. Finally, after consulting discreetly with Dr. Bailey during one of her school days in town, she received confirmation of her suspicions. She was with child, due in the early spring. That evening, she prepared Adam's favorite meal, roast beef with potatoes and fresh bread. She took special care with her appearance, wearing the blue dress he particularly admired and arranging her hair in soft curls around her face. Adam noticed immediately when he returned from his work. "What's the occasion?" he asked, washing up at the basin. "Does there need to be an occasion for me to make a nice dinner?" Rebecca countered with a smile. He approached her with a suspicious grin, pulling her into his arms. "You're hiding something, I can tell." Rebecca laughed, her heart full to bursting with the secret she carried. "Perhaps I am." "Tell me," he urged, nuzzling her neck in the way he knew made her weak need. "After dinner," she promised, pushing him gently away, "or it will get cold." Throughout the meal, Rebecca could hardly contain her excitement, and Adam watched her with growing curiosity. When they had finished eating, she took his hands across the table. "I have news," she began, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. Adam's expression grew serious. "Is everything all right?" "More than all right," Rebecca assured him. Taking a deep breath, she said, "We're going to have a baby in early April, according to Dr. Bailey." Adam stared at her, momentarily speechless. Then, with a whoop of joy that startled her, he was out of his chair and pulling her into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen. "Careful," she laughed as he set her down gently. "A baby," he repeated, his hands framing her face with wonder. "Our baby." Rebecca nodded, tears of happiness spilling down her cheeks. "Are you pleased?" "Pleased. Rebecca, I'm—" Words seemed to fail him, and instead he kissed her with such tenderness that it spoke volumes. When they parted, he placed a reverent hand on her still flat abdomen. "I never thought I'd have this," he admitted quietly. "After the war, I didn't think I deserved a family." "Oh, Adam," Rebecca breathed, covering his hand with hers, "you deserve every happiness, and I intend to spend our lives making sure you know it." The coming months brought many changes to the Xavier Ranch. Adam threw himself into preparations for the baby with characteristic thoroughness. He built a cradle from pine harvested on their land, sanded smooth and polished to a gentle sheen. He expanded their root cellar to ensure they would have ample food stored for winter when Rebecca would be in her final months and unable to make trips to town. Rebecca, meanwhile, began creating tiny garments from soft flannel, each stitch a testament to her love for the child growing within her. The women of Park City rallied around her, bringing gifts for the baby and offering advice on childbirth and infant care. As her body changed with the advancing pregnancy, Adam's devotion only deepened. He watched over her with protective concern, insisting she rest frequently and taking on many of her usual chores. At night, he would place his hand on her swelling belly, marveling at the occasional flutter of movement beneath his palm. Do you think it's a boy or a girl?" He asked one snowy evening as they lay in bed, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. "I don't know," Rebecca answered truthfully. "I'll be happy either way." "Me too," Adam agreed. "Though if it's a boy, I'll teach him ranching, and if it's a girl," he smiled. "Well, I'll teach her ranching too, if she wants to learn," Rebecca laughed. "And I'll teach either of them to read and write and cipher. They'll be the smartest, strongest child in Montana territory," Adam declared, pulling her closer. Winter settled over the land with a heavy blanket of snow, isolating the ranch for days at a time. Adam had prepared well, ensuring they had ample supplies and firewood to last through the coldest months. Christmas came, their first together, and they celebrated simply but joyfully. Adam gifted Rebecca a handcrafted rocking chair for nursing the baby, while she presented him with a fine new leather-bound journal. "For recording our family's history," she explained as he ran his fingers over the embossed cover. "Our family," he repeated, the words still filling him with wonder. As January gave way to February, Rebecca's pregnancy progressed without complications. Dr. Bailey visited when weather permitted, pronouncing her healthy and the baby well-positioned. Still, as her due date approached, Adam grew increasingly anxious. "What if the weather turns bad when it's time?" he worried one evening. "What if we can't get to town? Women have been having babies without doctors for centuries," Rebecca reminded him. "And Mrs. Peterson has delivered several babies when Dr. Bailey couldn't be present." "I've arranged for her to stay with us starting in March," Adam admitted, "just in case." Rebecca kissed him softly, always thinking ahead. March arrived with the first hints of spring, patches of ground appearing through melting snow, birds returning to build nests, creeks swollen with runoff. Rebecca's belly had grown enormous, making movement cumbersome but filling her with anticipation. As promised, Mrs. Peterson arrived to stay at the ranch, bringing her experience and calm presence. She took over much of the cooking, freeing Rebecca to rest more. "The baby will come when it's ready," she assured them both. First babies often take their time, but the baby had other plans. One night in late March, nearly 2 weeks before her expected due date, Rebecca awoke to a sharp pain across her lower back. She lay still, wondering if it was just the normal discomfort of late pregnancy when another pain gripped her stronger than the first. "Adam," she whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. He woke immediately, instantly alert. "What is it? Is it time?" "I think so," Rebecca confirmed as another contraction built. "Wake Mrs. Peterson." What followed was the longest day of Rebecca's life. The labor progressed steadily through morning and into afternoon, with Adam never leaving her side. He wiped her brow, held her hand through contractions, and murmured words of encouragement when her strength flagged. Mrs. Peterson proved her worth many times over, her experienced hands checking Rebecca's progress and positioning her for the most effective delivery. As evening approached, she announced that the time was near. "With the next contraction, you'll need to push," she instructed. Rebecca, exhausted beyond measure, gathered her remaining strength. Adam supported her from behind, his strong arms helping her sit upright. "You can do this," he whispered in her ear. "You're the strongest person I know." With a cry that seemed torn from her soul, Rebecca pushed, feeling the baby move within her. 3 more contractions, 3 more heroic efforts, and suddenly a new sound filled the room, the indignant wail of a newborn taking its first breath. "A boy," Mrs. Peterson announced triumphantly, placing the squalling infant on Rebecca's chest. "A fine, healthy boy." Rebecca gazed down at their son through tears of exhaustion and joy. Red-faced and angry at his eviction from his comfortable home, he was nevertheless the most beautiful sight she had ever beheld. Tiny fingers curled against her skin as his cries subsided into hiccuping breaths. "Adam," she whispered, looking up at her husband, "look what we made." Adam's face was transformed by wonder and love. He reached out a trembling hand to touch the downy head of his son, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "He's perfect," he breathed. "You're both perfect." Later, after Mrs. Peterson had helped clean both mother and child and seen them comfortably settled, Adam sat on the edge of the bed, unable to take his eyes off his family. "What shall we name him?" Rebecca asked, cradling their sleeping son. Adam considered for a moment. "William," he suggested. "After my father, if that's all right with you." "William Xavier," Rebecca tested the name, smiling. "I think it suits him perfectly." As night settled over the ranch, a profound peace descended with it. Rebecca dozed with William nestled securely against her, while Adam kept watch over them both, his heart so full it seemed it might burst. This, he realized, was what he had been seeking since returning from the war, not just land or success or even companionship, but a sense of belonging, of purpose beyond himself. In the unlikely arrival of a limping bride from a train platform, he had found redemption and a future brighter than he had dared to imagine. Spring bloomed fully across the Montana landscape, bringing with it the renewal of life everywhere. The cattle gave birth to calves, the garden sprouted fresh greens, and at the center of it all, young William Xavier thrived under the devoted care of his parents. Adam proved to be a natural father, as tender with his son as he was strong in his work. He would carry William with him around the ranch, pointing out cattle and horses, clouds and trees, as if the infant could understand every word. Rebecca recovered quickly from childbirth, regaining her strength and resuming household duties with William either in her arms or sleeping nearby in the cradle Adam had crafted. She wrote long letters to Harriet in Boston, describing her happiness and enclosing a small sketch of William that Adam had surprised her by drawing. In May, they took William to town for his christening at the small church. The entire community turned out to welcome the newest resident of Park City, bearing gifts and well wishes. Rebecca, standing proudly beside Adam as Reverend Peterson blessed their child, marveled at how completely she had been embraced by this place that had once seemed so foreign. As summer approached, Adam began planning to expand their home. "We need more space," he explained as he showed Rebecca his drawings one evening. "Another bedroom for when William gets older, a proper study for you to continue your teaching." "Teaching?" Rebecca asked, surprised. "Mrs. Peterson mentioned that several families have asked if you might take on their children for regular lessons come fall," Adam said. "I thought you might like to use the front room as a classroom a few days each week." Rebecca's heart swelled with gratitude. "You wouldn't mind?" "Mind," Adam laughed. "Rebecca, your teaching is part of who you are. I would never want you to give that up." She kissed him then, deeply and thoroughly, until William's fussing from his cradle reminded them they were not alone. Summer passed in a blur of activity. Adam built the addition to their home with help from neighbors, while Rebecca divided her time between caring for William, maintaining the household, and preparing lessons for the small group of students she would begin teaching in September. In August, as they celebrated their first anniversary, not of their legal marriage by proxy, but of Rebecca's arrival in Park City, Adam presented her with a final surprise. "I've been saving this," he said, handing her a small box, "for when I was sure you were truly happy here." Inside lay a delicate silver locket. When Rebecca opened it, she found a tiny portrait of Adam on one side and William on the other, expertly painted by an artist who had passed through town in July. "So we're always with you," Adam explained, "even when you're teaching or in town without us." Rebecca, overcome with emotion, could only embrace him tightly, the locket clutched in her hand. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she whispered against his chest. "Nor I," Adam admitted, stroking her hair. "When I sent that advertisement east, I hoped for a companion, someone practical to share the work and perhaps ease the loneliness. I never expected to find my heart's desire limping off a train." Rebecca laughed through her tears, remembering that painful first meeting. "And I never expected the man who said you're home now. Rest easy to become the home I'd always longed for." As twilight deepened around them, William sleeping peacefully nearby, Adam and Rebecca stood together on the porch of the home they had built, not just the physical structure, but the bonds of love, trust, and shared purpose that had transformed two wounded souls into a family. The Montana sky stretched endlessly above them, painted in hues of purple and gold as the sun surrendered to the night. Like the land itself, Their story had known both harsh seasons and abundant harvests. And like the pioneers who had come before them, they had found that the greatest treasures often emerge from the most unlikely beginnings. For Rebecca Xavier, the journey that had begun with pain and uncertainty, a twisted ankle, and a desperate leap of faith had led to the greatest blessing of her life. In the arms of a quiet cowboy, she had found not just shelter, but a love that would sustain them through whatever trials the frontier might bring. And for Adam Xavier, the wounded soldier who had sought solitude in the vast Montana territory, the arrival of a limping bride had been the beginning of healing he had thought forever beyond his reach. In Rebecca's steadfast heart and William's innocent trust, he had found redemption and purpose. Together, they faced the future unafraid, secure in the knowledge that home wasn't a place on a map, but the love they had built between them, a love that had begun with a simple act of kindness on a train platform and grown into a bond that would endure for all their days. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Adam drew Rebecca closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You're home now," he whispered, echoing the words that had begun their journey, "and so am I." Rebecca smiled, leaning into his embrace as William stirred and then settled in his cradle beside them. "Yes," she agreed, her heart full, "we all are."